Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this year's World Aquatic Animal Day on disentangling the sustainability myth in fishing and aquaculture. I hope you enjoyed the lunch session with ARC PDX. World Aquatic Animal Day is a project of the Aquatic Animal Law Initiative and the Animal Law Clinic at the Center for Animal Law Studies at Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland, Oregon. My name is Rebecca Critser. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an animal law LLM candidate and a student of the Advanced Animal Law Clinic at the Lewis and Clark Law School. Thank you for turning in to the session on the power of alternatives. We are extremely excited to have Matthew de Gruyter from Next Level Burger.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. Nice to meet you, Rebecca.
Nice to meet you, Matt. Welcome. Wonderful to have you here. A few formalities to go over, particularly for anybody who wasn't able to join our morning sessions. So this session is a Zoom webinar format. You will not be able to see yourself or other attendees, but you will be able to see the speakers. You will be muted for this session, but can submit your comments and questions, which I will explain in a moment. Please note that part of the session is being recorded, and we hope to have that video available in a few weeks. Links to all videos will be on our website at www.worldaquaticanimalday.org and on the Center for Animal Law Studies YouTube channel. For any further information about today's events, please check out our website, which you can find by searching for World Aquatic Animal Day. After both speakers have presented, we hope to have a time for a brief Q&A. To submit your questions, please use the Q&A box on your screen. And if you want to share your attendance at this presentation on your social media, which we encourage you to do, please use our dedicated hashtag World Aquatic Animal Day. Now to our wonderful speakers. Matt is the co-founder and CEO of Next Level Burger, America's first 100% plant-based burger joint, serving up burgers for a better world on the daily in locations coast to coast. The fast-growing vegan chain has a huge commitment to sustainability and fighting climate change. Since its start in 2014, Next Level Burger has become a plant-based phenomenon. Matt and his wife and co-founder, Sierra de Gruyter, find themselves leading a large-scale national expansion, adding more cities and more stores every year, but never losing sight of the passion for serving healthy, sustainably sourced food that drives their commitment to non-GMO and organic. Next Level Burger is all about nourishing the people and nurturing the planet. I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Matt.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for the wonderful introduction. I wish I could see everybody. The Zoom universe of the last 2 years of the coronavirus has definitely made for interesting fodder because, and of course, that's hopefully starting to change, have the ability to step onto a stage and talk to everybody at the same time. But for everybody out there, it's wonderful to meet you. As Rebecca so kindly introduced me as, I am the co-founder and CEO of Next Level Burger. And yes, we were and are America's first 100% plant-based burger joint way before this vegan thing was cool. And it was awesome to have Lewis and Clark reach out and ask me if I would be game to give a presentation / talk, and I prefer conversation, even if it's one-sided insofar as the sort of construct, about alternatives for the future, because there is a guy I know pretty well that grew up on a 100% not plant-based diet, who has shifted his paradigm completely in the pursuit of the best, of the optimal, of what I think is the future. And obviously the future looks different to different people, but I think all of us that are concerned and would like to see humanity thrive on this planet in the not just years, but the decades and hopefully the centuries to come, has to be focused on sustainability. And so going back a bit here, as I mentioned, I grew up on a very traditional American diet. Everything from scratch, always had cookies and brownies on the countertop. My mom was an amazing cook. Everything was from scratch and delicious, but very animal protein and dairy heavy. And unfortunately, when I was 27, my mother at the age of 56 was diagnosed for the second time with breast cancer. She had been diagnosed with it when I was a teenager, as was my younger brother, just a couple years younger than I was. She beat it the first time, and on her 10th anniversary of beating cancer, we found out it was back, and it had metastasized throughout her whole body. And we lost her just 2 short weeks later. As you can imagine, and I'm going to be 40 this year, so this is a few years ago now. The sort of rawness of saying goodbye to my mother at 56, which every year I get older, the more aware I am of how young 56 really was. And what this sort of paralleled with was my wife starting to pursue this crazy thing, this weird Martian sounding thing called a vegan diet, which I got the whole vegetarian bit. You don't want to hurt animals, but come on, a glass of milk, cheese on your pizza. What's the harm in that? And yet, at this point in my life, I was ripped wide open to re-examine my sort of paradigm. My mother passed away just 4 days before my son turned 3. And, we were at his birthday party, and it was, of course, a bit sober, but I was, we were keeping it together, and I was, and trying to make it fun for him. And I was across the table. I still remember this to this day. And I was watching him at his, precious 3-year-old self. And I was thinking how desperately I wanted to see him grow and hopefully grow old, to see him have kids and to live life. And that I really wanted to do everything that I could within my power to make that happen, to influence that future. And so at the same time that all this was going on, my wife was pursuing this sort of topic of a vegan plant-based diet, and she did a very dangerous thing, something that's been dangerous throughout history. She bought books and left them around the house. And I started reading these books, like The China Study by Dr. Colin T. Campbell, How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Caldwell Esselstyn, and many others. And as I started flipping through these books, I realized that there was this tremendous correlation with health outcomes and what we decided to put in our body. And so my wife had already stepped onto this vegan train at this time. I didn't want to get her hopes up, because at the time I didn't consider a meal unless it had an ample amount of focus, a center of animal protein. And so I said, okay, I'm going to try this for 30 days. I'm going to see how I feel. And I can do it for 30 days. And if at the end of the 30 days, it's not for me, it's not for me. And I got 2 weeks into it. This is 2010, October, and I felt awesome. My career, everybody hold your breath here, at the time was oil and gas private equity. I basically was standing on the opposite side of the spectrum for where I stand today. But coming back to the alternatives for the future, frankly, I think we should all be thinking about that always. What is the best path forward? And so 2010, this experiment of a couple of weeks turns into a complete transition for our whole family. At the time, my wife and myself, our son, we were joined by our daughter the following year in 2011. And we felt this sort of itch to do something bigger than ourselves. And so a couple of years after our daughter was born, we decided to do something either absolutely insane or absolutely inspired. And I don't know, ask me in 10 years, I'll tell you which one it was. And that was to step into probably the only business riskier than my business of oil and gas. And that was in the business of restaurants. Now, my wife, far better looking and more intelligent half of the co-founding team for Next Level Burger, we had worked our way through college. I bartended and she served, both at steakhouses. Irony knows no bounds. But beyond that, we didn't have any experience. What we did have was a desire to do something bigger than ourselves. I had a desire, I did very well financially, but that was the sum end all of my day. That taking care of my family, which I was honored to do, and charitable contributions. And so what we saw was this tremendous opportunity to literally be America's first plant-based burger joint, America's first vegan burger joint, before anybody was really talking about this plant-based, what would become a phenomenon, or this vegan, this sustainability focused movement. And frankly, at the time, in my oil and gas private equity ways, I wasn't thinking that much about the sustainability of the planet. I was thinking about the sustainability of our nation and our world's health. I was thinking about how, as I looked around, we didn't look like a nation thriving. We look like a nation struggling. You know, I usually ask this question in a format that allows it, but I'll try to pull it off here in Zoom universe. Everybody just take a moment and think about the answer to this question before I answer it. What do you think the average age of an American today in America, where we can start to see the symptoms of heart disease? What's the average age? Would you think it's 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, teens? The answer is 11 years old. I first heard that statistic from a plant-based cardiologist, and I didn't believe it because it sounded so extraordinary, so unbelievable. But I've seen it verified, and it's true. And we realized that we had to shift. We had to not pretend like it was the 20th century. We had to re-envision what the future could look like. And so Sierra and I decided that we would go off on this insane journey to build America's first plant-based burger joint that was going to be focused on plant-based ingredients, organics, non-GMO, and a commitment to living wages, which we probably should have had our heads examined, because the restaurant business is difficult in and of itself. To add that sort of absolute set of commitments is just pure crazy talk. But I resigned my position in 2013. And less than a year later, we opened up America's first plant-based burger joint. And the initial response was just out of this world. People had walked into our restaurant and said, I have dreamed of something like this, and now here it is. Or they walked into our restaurant and said, there's no way, much like I probably would have said at 26, that you can have a burger joint without the beef burger. And yet people were walking in from all sorts of different walks of life, having this experience of realizing they could eat healthier. Now, about 6 months after we opened up our first restaurant, I had a couple come in and they were just raving about the food. And they said, have you seen this documentary called Cowspiracy? Which to me at the time sounded, a little out there. And frankly, I was so busy that I hadn't had time to do anything but work. And I said, I'm not familiar with it, but I haven't seen it. But actually, the directors rolled through here the first week we were open, touring the country and showing this film, but I've never seen it. And they said, you've got to see it. And so that I think it was that night, my wife and I watched this movie about really climate change and the current food system. And is, again, someone whose background was in oil and gas, whose family was a family of oil and gas. My father's a very successful retired geophysicist, over $9 billion of discoveries found, a breathtakingly successful career. My uncle was the president of the pipeline up in BP. I mean, this was in my blood. Now, I accidentally ended up there, and that's a conversation for another day, because I joined the Marine Corps out of high school and then went to college to become a lawyer. But my wife and I found out we were going to have our first way ahead of schedule, about 10 years ahead of schedule. So in another life, maybe in another parallel universe, I'm a lawyer somewhere. But instead, I ended up in the pursuit of bringing home a paycheck in a position where I was in some ways pushing that oil and gas legacy forward. And so as I'm watching this movie about the way that we're basically living on this planet and feeding ourselves, I'm realizing that while health is breathtakingly important, obviously health is wealth. Anyone who has struggled or has watched someone that is close to them struggle with their health, you can have $1 million or $1 billion in the bank. If you don't have that, you feel literally, as if things are not as they should be. And you feel that way because, well, they aren't. And so what I realized at this moment, and as I've started reading books about climate change and sustainability, is that while this health push, and it of course is still very near and dear to our hearts, frankly, without my mother's passing, NLB probably wouldn't exist. We realized, and this is crystallized in my mind, that we didn't just need to reinvent the all-American burger joint for the 21st century because of the health of our country. We needed to reinvent the all-American burger joint because, quite literally, the future of humanity and the rest of the species on this planet are contingent on us getting this right. You know, I would argue that climate change and sustainability, the protecting of our oceans and our skies, of our water, is the most important moment in human history. Yeah, we look back, and of course, this is even more stark with a ground war and an air war going on in Europe. But we look back at the great generation that fought and won World War II is one of the most important moments in modern human history. And I would say, as insane as this sounds to say, that this is more important. That we don't get this right, and almost nothing else, at least for our species, is probably going to matter. Life almost undoubtedly will go on. The planet's been here for roughly 4.5 billion years, and life has figured out how to move through every previous mass extinction event, but we may not. And if we are, we may not be living anything but a shadow of the way that we live today and the conveniences that we have and the lives that we're able to live, so many of us, unfortunately not all of us. And so for us, and in our day-to-day, our goal is to do what ultimately is arguably the most important thing you can change in your day-to-day as an individual. And that is to change the way you eat. And it can be as simple as working and moving more plants into your diet. You can reduce your carbon footprint by 50% roughly by eating plant-based any day of the week. Now, you can also reduce your water consumption by not showering, but none of us appreciate that long term. So, you know, taking a fresh look at how you eat and how you go about your week and what you put in your fridge and where you stop to grab that bite, all of that to the tune of 7+ billion people on the planet matters to a degree that is actually quantifiable. And so for us at Next Level Burger, and when I look in my kids' eyes now, almost 15 and 10, and I realize that what we do, the gray hair on my head, the day-to-day of basically reinventing the all-American burger joint, and what we started in serving, you know, hundreds of people and then thousands of people, and now hundreds of thousands of people we served this past year, and we're probably going to break into the millions as we finish up 22 and step into 23. We're in the process of quadrupling our store count right now through 2025. What we are doing is making a difference in the future. And we are far from the only ones, whether it's Elon Musk on the sort of grandiose side of things, re-envisioning what transportation looks like for the automotive industry, or it's those that are focused on organic agriculture and how we can do that at scale in a way that really feeds the world. There are so many people that are thinking about that alternative future, because just because we did it a certain way in the past does not mean that we should continue to do that into the future. And we have this unbelievable opportunity to make the right decision. We have this unbelievable opportunity to do what we need to do so that not just our great grandkids in some far off future are going to be okay, but so that we, you, me, our kids, the people that you eat breakfast with every morning, are going to be able to have a bright future. And so what I would encourage everyone to do, if you have not already done this, is to think about for yourself, for what you do, for your impact on the world. How can you, if you're not already doing this, think about what you do in a different way, an alternative way, a way that is going to lift up sustainability, whether it's the air, it's the water, it's the oceans, it's, you know, the treasure trove of opportunity right now to make a difference. I mean, there's never been a grander time to decide to pick up a piece of the puzzle of the future and play a part in it. And so for NLB, for Next Level Burger, for America's first, 100% plant-based burger joint, and this is not to say that the days at times don't get frustrating and aren't necessarily difficult, because boy, oh boy, you better believe the last 2 years of being in the restaurant business has been unbelievably difficult. But we believe that the future is bright. We just believe that it's up to all of us to make sure of it. And at Next Level Burger, we want to make sure that we can say we did our part in casting a future that looks different from the past. Yeah, because it has to, because it should, because I believe it will. So that is the end of my presentation / conversation. I'm not sure, Rebecca, if you want to step into Q&A after we have had sort of the totality of the talk. So I yield the floor to you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much for that really interesting conversation. We are hoping that maybe we can get our second speaker back online. Ashley, he was the founder of Planted Foods, was with us, but seems to be having some internet issues.
That never happens in the coronavirus. I mean, my Zoom always works perfectly, so I can't imagine.
Right. Always a first time for everything. So maybe we will do some Q&A right now with you while we wait to see if she's able to get back online. Are you okay with that?
I am 100% game. In fact, I, as you can imagine, love to have the sort of conversation. As I mentioned, it's nice to be able to, it's wonderful to see you back, as opposed to staring at myself. So absolutely open for Q&A. And we can wait for my fellow panelists to jump on if she can figure out those internet connection issues.
Well, that sounds lovely. I will remind everyone in the audience that if you have questions for Matthew, you can put them in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many as we can. We have one, I will just say, comment here from one of our colleagues who just said, I don't know if you can read this, just wanted to say thanks for hosting a fundraiser for my kids' school at Next Level Burger a few months ago. So passing along the thank yous for that.
Well, and if I may, Rebecca, so yeah. This is one of my favorite parts about what we do is that, and this is one of the reasons I think we haven't just survived the coronavirus so far, we've thrived through it. I mean, we've had record-setting quarters and years, and so much of it has to do with the fact that we have tied into our communities, not because it's a great business sort of move, but because it's a genuine reflection of who we are as a company, right? So we love to connect with the schools in our communities. I mean, the next generation, I'm raising a couple of them now. In fact, my son just clocked in at 130 pounds and he's coming up on 6 feet tall. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where did you come from? And what's exciting, in fact, real quick, we just got back from spring break at the coast and we rolled by a McDonald's. And I said to my wife, I was like, I've been plant-based now since 2010 and vegan since 2013. And I said, there's still this part of me that I see that the golden arches and it's like, it still sounds good. And like, I am an absolute enemy of the McDonald's state. So this is me being very transparent. And I said, that's such a testament to the programming that happens, when I was a kid, and that was like such a treat, like to go into McDonald's, whether we are, on a road trip or I was with my grandparents. And what's so exciting is that companies like Next Level Burger, and there are others, are creating alternatives to that experience for the kids that are growing up now. Because when my kids see a McDonald's, they don't have any of those memories because they've never been to one, right? Except to maybe use the restroom across the country. They think Next Level Burger, and they think about those shakes, they think about those fries, they think about those burgers, and those sort of. And again, there are many other companies doing very similar things. Those are the concentric circles that are going to move out toward that brighter future I was talking about. And so, for everybody on here, if there's a Next Level Burger either near you or, we're on a pretty aggressive, for a company of our size, expansion plan right now, opening up our next location on the other side of Portland, West Burnside, right outside where the Timbers professional soccer sports team plays. If you are a parent or you're connected to those schools, please reach out to us. One of our favorite things is to partner with local schools and to do fundraisers, that allow us to sort of connect with that community in an intimate way. I mean, the sort of ancient ritual of feeding someone else. I mean, this goes back millennia over millennia, right? And we've turned it into this lame business sort of construct where it's like, yep, turn and burn. But what we're really doing is preparing food and placing that as an offering in front of someone else. And that's just such a humbling experience and such an awesome experience and such an intimate way to connect with another person or to connect with a community. So thank you. I can't see the comment, but whoever put that up there, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, and I think your discussion there about the childhood memories around McDonald's, which I confess I share, also plant-based, haven't been in a minute. But I think it sort of lends itself nicely into one of my questions I have for you, which, if you bear with me, it has a bit of an intro to it. So
Sure.
one of the conversations that I find myself often having with others about alternatives is sort of, who are the alternatives made for? Are they made for vegetarians and vegans to give them more options? Or are they made to encourage people who regularly eat meat to try a plant-based option? And I think you touched on this a little bit, but I was wondering if you could say more about to what extent those conversations inform business decisions, what goes on the menu, how you source your food.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that, Rebecca. So there are a few aspects to that. I'll probably break it down into two buckets. One bucket is that with Next Level Burger, as I said, my wife had started on this vegan journey before I did, and at a very skeptical place for myself. And I have walked into some weird places to get a bite to eat with her. I mean, some very, very strange places. One in particular, I have some funny memories about. And some of the times it was a great experience. It was just kind of had to see past the wrapping, and other times it was just straight up strange. But experiences nonetheless. And with Next Level Burger, we did not want to create a concept for vegans and vegetarians. Now, we're delighted to feed those people because, frankly, our family are those people, right? Our entire family is vegan. But that's 4% of the population, maybe 10, depending on what segment of the population that you take a splice of. Millennials, 10, overall population, like 4%. So what we wanted to create was something that would appeal to almost everyone, this full spectrum of offerings, from, my wife, who is a, vegan, college educated, mother of two, loves yoga and Lululemon pants that I call Lululemon because they're so fancy. As well as my father-in-law, who very successful in business, built a steel infrastructure company, 20, 30, $40 million a year in revenue, but has eaten at every diner between here and the Mississippi and back, and literally goes out of his way to eat as poorly as he possibly can most days. But he loves our food. And my wife, and I'm picture a cross between John Wayne, Yosemite Sam, that is my father-in-law, handlebar mustache, the whole nine. They can walk into a Next Level Burger and they can both have a meal that they love. And they can walk out feeling great. My father-in-law has said that so many times, I can't even count. He's like, man, it just amazes me how much better I feel when I eat your food versus McDonald's. And so for us, we have offerings: Whole Foods, plant-based, fully organic, a mushroom quinoa patty to light your taste buds on fire. It's our signature burger, one of our top sellers. We also have a down and dirty version, that classic fast food experience, where it's that classic cheeseburger where you feel like you're really being naughty, but you're not, and you can feel good at the end of that meal. And that full spectrum of offerings, I think, is one of the reasons that when you walk into a Next Level, you may see construction workers sitting right next to, yogis, and they're both enjoying, in some cases, the same food, like the exact same thing off the menu. And so, that's that first bucket, that full spectrum. And then from the standpoint of the second bucket is making sure that as a business, we're actually putting something out into the world that people want. right? Now, I will say our approach here has been atypical. We kind of started with the question of what would our family really appreciate and enjoy? And then let's build that. And when we built our proof of concept restaurant, we were like, ooh, is anybody else going to be excited by this plant-based, organic, non-GMO burger joint idea? And they were. And what we've continued to do, we just launched a new menu, which it's the sort of theme was spice on the 25th. And it's a continuation of us not necessarily going, hey, what is the coolest like top 12 trend thing we can look at and try to do that? We go, what would excite us? And then we put that on the menu. And, quite often, with very few exceptions, people are excited about what we're doing. So it's not quite market making, but in some ways you could kind of consider it that. And that is why, we've got a whole creed of commitments, which I could get into here. It's a Jim Collins concept of writing down, and some of you may be familiar, basically a long-term construct paradigm of how you run your business. And one of the most important elements on that creed of commitments is adapt or die, a constant state of evolution, so that we're leaning forward. And so when it comes to looking at this as a business, we absolutely do. But we really start at a place where we say, are we going to be excited about this that's on our menu? And so far, with very few exceptions, that has meant that our communities, and even as importantly, if not more importantly, our team members are excited too.
Well, thank you for that answer. I really appreciate that. And I will say, as an aside, in reference to the spice comment you made, I have had the opportunity of trying your ghost pepper sauce. As a non-Portland native, it is the first truly spicy item that I've had to eat since I've been here in Portland. So thank you for that.
Where are you from, Rebecca?
I'm from the Midwest originally. I live on the East Coast, and I will be very glad when Next Level Burger makes its way out to my hometowns for sure.
Awesome. Well, that was our goal with that. You just put a big smile on my face with the ghost pepper. We were like, all right, if we're going to say this is spicy, we got to truly take this to the pun intended next level. And we actually have finally hit that mark. People are like, wow, that's got some kick to it. So
it does. It's wonderful.
Good.
We do have
words.
some questions coming in here. So one of our our guests says, excellent presentation, and asks, have you considered developing a next level dog burger for man's best food?
Well, as the proud dad of a almost, what is he going to be? 13-year-old German Shepherd. He is an old man. I mean, he's still doing great. I love that question. We actually, from the beginning, we were thinking about dogs, and we first, and still have at one of our locations, our organic plant-based dog bones. I love the idea of a dog burger. I'm not sure exactly what that looked like. I'm picturing my daughter has a coronavirus puppy, a Boston Terrier. So we have this German Shepherd and this Boston Terrier, and we ended up getting her because she has a cleft palate, and so we wanted to basically take care of somebody that might not otherwise get a good home. And I'm thinking about the two of them and what it would look like to tackle a next level burger that was made for dogs, but I love the idea. So I don't have anything that I can whip out of my pocket right now with, yes, we do have that, but I love the idea, and it may be something fun to do as a limited time offering for like National Dog Day. So I love that.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can take that suggestion back, and maybe in the years to come, we'll see some product come out of it. That would be amazing. Follow-up question here from one of our wonderful professors at Lewis and Clark. She asks, are you excited about the potential of cell-cultivated meat? If it becomes affordable, would you consider carrying cell-cultivated burgers?
Great question. I am over the moon about cell-cultivated meat. I think that we are going to, in the not too distant future, look back at a time when we raised animals for slaughter and shudder. Yeah, there are some analogies to that. I mean, we think about, the modern day sort of factory farm versus what farms look like a few hundred years ago. Heck, not even a few hundred years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. We compare what our factory farms look like today to what they look like in the 19th century, and no one that I would think would be able to ever speak to that as a human being could ever sort of support that. But we're doing the same thing in many ways, I think, when we're talking about mass slaughter at factory farms. I mean, it's just, I have yet to find anyone that can really, maybe a shareholder or Cargill, that can support and defend that version of treatment of animals. And I think it's only going to last very long. There's, people have heard it said, if slaughterhouses were made with glass walls, they wouldn't exist, right? Like, and I mean, it's so famous, it's a saying that goes with it, right? Nobody wants to see how the sausage is made. And so, for me, I think that almost undoubtedly, just from a sort of moral awareness perspective, we're going to shift away from factory farmed animal protein. But even if you say, I don't care about animals, I just care about feeding humans, and okay, let's start there, then conservation, resource conservation, will not allow us to continue to raise animals to the tune of the way we do it today. It's just not in any way, shape, or form sustainable. And so I think that we're going to continue to eat animal protein probably for a long time, maybe in perpetuity. I don't know. But for not too many more years, is it going to come from animals raised in a factory farm or even a pasture? It's going to come out of factories that don't involve a live animal in the process almost at all, because it's going to become less expensive. It's going to be then a traditional animal protein, and it's going to be far more sustainable. Quality control is going to be far higher. I mean, my wife has a nephew that almost died eating a traditional fast food burger from I think it's the E. coli 157 variant. Literally, I think he was 5, almost died. And the crazy thing, Rebecca, his parents still take him to the same restaurant and he gets the same burger, from what I understand, which is just really mind-boggling. And so why would we, the studies and the news articles that come out about even on organic chicken, what's there, there's just no reason that I think reasonably at scale, human beings are going to continue to raise live animals for food. But I have no doubt we're going to cultivate meat and we're going to grow animal protein in a way that is going to be sustainable and is probably going to be far healthier, both from a sort of contagion perspective, as well as from a quality control perspective. Now, for Next Level Burger, to get to the second part of the question, we will not at any point add animal protein to our menu, whether it's cultivated in a lab or otherwise, because our focus is on that sort of commitment to, again, plant-based ingredients, organics, non-GMO, and living wages. Perfect example of this is Impossible. Love what they're doing as a company and as a brand. I think they do so many amazing things and they are literally pushing the world forward. But we don't have an Impossible on our menu because they do use a GMO. And our commitment has been, and this isn't fear mongering, however, I think that the onus should be on ensuring that anything genetically modified is absolutely healthy long term before we introduce it into our system, much more along the lines of Europe than the United States. And so that, genetically modified hemoglobin that's in the Impossible burger, celebrate it, but we wouldn't put it in front of our kids, so we're not going to put it in the restaurant. And so for our approach, no, as long as I'm the CEO of Next Level Burger, you won't see a cultivated meat burger on the menu, but I couldn't be cheering harder for it on the sidelines, because let's just be real. From a conservation standpoint, from a pollution standpoint, and from just a pure morality perspective, there is no reason that it becomes less expensive to grow meat in a lab that we should continue to subject animals and the environment to that process.
Thank you so much for that really considerate response. Thank you for that wonderful question.
Great
I have
question.
a few more. What's that?
That was a great question. I love that.
Yeah. I have a few more questions for you. I'm really enjoying having this conversation with you. And I'd like to, if you're okay with it, maybe invite Kathy and Miranda to join us visually so we can have them ask some questions as well. Are you okay with that if we do that?
Oh, I couldn't be more on board. I got a chance to meet Kathy and Miranda a few weeks ago over a Zoom call talking about this, and would love to have them join us. Hey, Kathy.
And if you don't mind me asking a question.
No, please.
Your engagement with the community is really important here in Portland, and I know that's an important part of your business. And
Yeah.
our audience is made up of some lawyers and some activists. And so I guess, do you have any tips or suggestions or thoughts, number one, for young advocates, people who are entering this space, sort of maybe on a different path than you or similar, but so one, any tips for them, and if there's time, another question would be anything that we in the law space can be doing to help the work that you're doing to make it easier, to make it more productive?
Okay, those are good questions. The first one I could go off on for a half hour, so let me see if I can condense my response there. I think that one of the most important elements of connecting with people that I've seen, we opened up the first restaurant for Next Level Burger in 2014. And one of the very important elements for me was that it would not be a judgment zone that people would walk into. I can appreciate where a lot of people are coming from because it's the path I walked for the first, 27 years of my life. I didn't think, literally, I am not exaggerating here when I say I ate 8 to 10 pounds of red meat a week, every week. It was like, if it wasn't a client lunch, it was a gigantic steak burrito from Chipotle. And then it was a 16 to 24 ounce steak that night, big salad, baked potato. I thought that was like the optimum diet. And so I think one of the first things that I would urge people to think about in their connecting with other human beings, because fundamentally that's what this is all about, right? Whether it's in the legal system or it's in the business world or it's in the nonprofit world, people get elected because they connect with other people, right? People get laws passed because they connect with other people. People make businesses grow by connecting with other people, right? It all comes back to this connection. And what we're starting to wake up to is that it's not just the human species that we need to consider, it's the rest of the planet, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all connected, right? Whether we like it or not, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we are. And so I think one of the best ways to shut down the ability for that communication and connection to happen is to come in hot in a judgmental way. Because there is no way that you're going to convince someone. I have seen people hold dearly to their diet and their idea of sustainability more desperately than their religion. And so, don't walk into a conversation with a Christian or, a Muslim or an atheist and tell them they're wrong and here's why. Because I guarantee you're going to have a bad conversation. Instead, what I think works is to connect with people as human beings and to help them understand why you see the world the way you do. I'm a big advocate of Stoicism. And it's funny because our teachers and our parents said this to us for, going back time immemorial, but it's a Stoic philosophy and saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk. And so I think quite often the best way to connect with somebody is to let them talk to you. Listen to what they have to say, not just preparing whatever you're going to say in response, but actually listen and understand where they're coming from. And that doesn't mean that the connection is always going to happen, but boy, oh boy, from personal experience, I can speak to the fact that it will happen exponentially more and deeper, and you will see longer lasting impacts from connecting with people in a genuine fashion where they feel like they're seen, feel like they're heard, if that makes sense. And then I got going so much on my answer there. Kathy, what was the second part of the question?
That was a great answer, and I really appreciate it. The second one is, given that we're a law school hosting this, are there things in the legal space we can be doing to help you?
I may be too much of a neophyte from a legal perspective to answer that question intelligently. What I will say, insofar as its intersection with Next Level Burger, to some extent, though far more in the CPG space, the sort of I'll use the classic, the sort of status quo, hey, you can't call this milk or you can't call that butter unless it's, real butter, or as my father-in-law say, is that real salt? Yes, Jerry, real salt. It's very much real salt. It's not digital magic food that doesn't really exist. It's real. But I think for me, the answer to that question would be and again, this is as a neophyte that can only speak to it so very much intelligently, it would be multifaceted. On one side, it would be ensuring that we don't have some sort of status quo definition for things like butter or milk or meat, because it's just silly in my opinion. I mean, it's semantics, and I understand, you're talking about an old industry that's trying to protect the way it was done because that's their business. And I get that. But the reality is that the more open, and we're seeing this now as the sort of giant CPG companies are coming to the realization, hey, this isn't just a fad, right? Sustainability might be something we care about, not just this year, but next and into the future, is clearing the way for a lot of that. And I know the Plant-Based Foods Association does a lot of work there for anybody that's familiar and trying to help lobbying in the direction of opening the sort of conduits for companies to describe themselves, however they like within reason, as long as it's not false advertising, obviously. And then, and if a guy can dream, it would be to see more laws around what is and isn't acceptable in the 21st century. I can't believe like factory farming going back to, I've got good friends that are hunters, sportsmen, I don't hunt, I never have, but I didn't like excommunicate them from my life because I, eat a vegan diet. I get what they do and why they do it. I can't say the same thing for factory farming. I think, and you can take the extreme examples, like veal, which I can't imagine someone, being able to defend effectively. But my dad, not throw you under the bus, Pops, my dad is one of the smart, he's a Mensa IQ, one of the smartest people I know. He is a 35-year geophysicist who does not believe in, human, created climate change. And the only conclusion that I can come to as I look into the eyes of an otherwise very intelligent man is that the cognitive dissonance between spending almost 4 decades pushing forward something that was horrendous for the planet, he just can't get past. And so quite often the people that are holding fast to the old way, it's because either their legacy is that or their business today is that. And I would love to see the law, to the extent it can, but as my godfather, who's an attorney for the IRS, I'm sorry about that, everybody, has said to me many times, the law is a blunt instrument, it's not a scalpel. But to the extent that we can start to make things that I am sure by the 22nd century we'll look back on and shudder, like factory farming should not be legal. The ability to have these disgusting cesspool swamps in places like North Carolina where people live, like that shouldn't be legal. And I would love to see in this magical land where we have a Will Smith that pops out of a genie in a bottle, Aladdin style, where, okay, if you're going to do animal agriculture, it has to be something that even beyond the well-being of an animal needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be something that actually checks the boxes of reasonable conservation and reasonable environmental protection. I think those are some pretty low bars.
That sounds great. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Miranda.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And as we're wrapping up this session, which thank you so much for everything you've shared today, I'm curious about how you shared a wonderful history of Next Level Burger being this classic burger joint, and yet you do have some seafood alternatives on your menu.
Yes.
Fishless fillets are one of my favorites. So I wanted to ask, why seafood alternatives? Just kind of wrapping up this day in and of itself, why did you choose to add that to your menu, and what do you have hopes maybe for expanding that?
So we actually just launched on Friday our Good Catch collaboration. So it's the good, if everybody's familiar with Gathered Foods Good Catch, Derek and Chad Sarno are a couple of buddies from mine. They've now become very sort of well-known chefs in the plant-based space. And Good Catch is one of their creations. They have several. And, for me, I've got to again profess my life is a sort of litany of ignorance and proof of it. When I stopped eating animal proteins, I shifted to being a pescatarian because I was like, oh, that's way better for me. And you could argue that it is in some ways. In other ways, you could argue against that. But then you take a look at the science and the data behind fishing, particularly at the commercial scale, and it's even worse, if you could argue, for the planet to be eating the way that we're eating when it comes to the oceans. And so, you know, again, yeah, as Rebecca and I talked about, like that classic McDonald's fish burger, you know, that we almost all of us, I mean, let's just be real, many of us, I should say, certainly my generation and back, like had that, right? And so you want to meet people where they are. So if like your fast food sort of indulgence is that fish burger, like we've got that for you. And of course, this month we're going to be donating 10% of proceeds from that burger to the Ocean Blue Project and helping to clean up the oceans. That's a whole nother. The great news, everybody, in the advocacy and sort of new business world is we got lots of opportunity to choose from. You want to clean up oceans? You want cleaner energy? Do you want to help change the way people eat? But we want to offer, Miranda, that spectrum of offerings so that whatever itch you want to scratch, unless it's a bison burger, we haven't figured that out yet, we got your back. And you can feel great about it both before, during, and after that indulgence, because, you know, I think at the end of the day, most people want to make the right decision. It's got to be affordable and it's got to be convenient enough. And as we see the intersection of availability and affordability happen more and more people are going to make that right choice. And as more people make that right choice, that pendulum is going to swing in the right direction. So my favorite saying, you know, the moral arc of the universe is long, and Lord, it's long, but it bends towards justice. And, you know, Martin Luther King famously said that. And I think when he said it, of course, one of the most probably famous things anybody ever said, but it was such a sort of insight into what we've seen in these decades since that was said, right? Like we're actually making progress at light speed. We just can't tell because this is our sort of time. But you don't have to go back very far to the virtual dark ages of humanity, both literally and figuratively, to realize that we're going in the right direction. It's just that the stakes have never been so high. That tipping point has never been so clear. I'm starting to preach, so I'm gonna stop there.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. We are I feel like we could keep chatting for hours more. Thank you so much for being with us today, Matthew. I really greatly appreciate it. I want to thank all of our attendees for attending the webinar today and invite you to extend a special thank you to Matthew as well. I am going to put some emails in the chat just now and go through some important information. So don't tune out just yet. If you have further questions, please feel free to reach out using the emails in the chat box. We will do our best to address those questions and possibly pass them on to Matthew if applicable. This does conclude the virtual session of the conference today, but we are very excited for the in-person action hour happening at 4 p.m. here in Portland, Oregon. And we look forward to continuing the conversation we've been having here with Matthew at that time. The in-person action hour will take place on the Lewis and Clark campus, and we will be in the Legal Research Center, also known as the LRC. When you arrive on campus, there will be signs directing you where to go. No registration is necessary, and you will have the opportunity to enjoy some delicious plant-based seafood alternatives. As a reminder, masks are no longer required, but it remains Lewis and Clark campus policy that all visitors must be vaccinated and boosted, and we ask that you only plan to attend if you meet these requirements. There will be a sign-in table at the entrance. I look forward to seeing all of you who are able to join us in a couple of hours. To everyone else, thank you so much for joining us online today. Please remember to complete the CLE form if you are getting credits for today's events. And a huge thank you to Matthew and his wonderful presentation and taking the extra time to talk with us today. Thank you.
No, my absolute pleasure. I enjoyed it thoroughly. My only chagrin is that I am not in Portland today. Otherwise, I would love to swing by and meet everybody in person. But regardless, I had a ball. And if there's anything I can ever do to help support y'all on what you're doing, or just to get together and pull up a digital chair and have a conversation like this, please let me know. I thoroughly enjoyed today's chat.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the cocktail hour.
Thanks.